Hi there guys, Jamie here and welcome back to the channel today. So in today's video I'm going to be covering the Airbus A320's MCDU, also known as the Multi-Purpose Control and Display Unit. Now for many the Airbus A320 is a symbol of modern aviation, and it's one of the reasons why I already have and probably will continue to have such a massive emphasis on the channel. Now, it's a masterpiece of engineering. It's revolutionised air travel. But don't be fooled, but behind its smooth handling and its automation lies a system that quite simply does most of, if not all of, the heavy lifting. And that is called the MCDU. Now, the MCDU isn't just a keypad with a screen. It's the primary interface between the pilots and the aircraft's flight management system. And it's responsible for everything from navigating the skies to optimizing fuel efficiency and calculating performance data. And it's quite simply the brains of the aircraft. But if you're new to it, and I suffered from this somewhat when I started using the simulator, it can feel somewhat intimidating, as can many other aspects of any large commercial aircraft. It's endless pages and cryptic abbreviations and unfamiliar terminology, alongside a sequence of inputs that you need to get right or it won't work, is why in this video today I'm going to dive deep and take you through a real world simulation from Gatwick up to Edinburgh. And I'm going to show you a step-by-step guide of how to set up the MCDU for a full flight, and ultimately how to use it and when to use it during various phases of flight, such as climb, cruise, descent, approach and landing. And I'm hoping by the end of this tutorial you'll not only understand how it works and what it's for, but you'll also be confident in how to use it and when to use it and how to do it properly. So get comfortable. What we'll do just now is we'll jump into the cockpit and we shall get started. So now we're in the cockpit and we've got power into the aircraft. Before we jump into programming the MCDU, I'd like to just take a moment to familiarise ourselves with the layout of it and understanding what each of the buttons do, just to try and make that process a little bit easier. So down here is our MCDU, and the MCDU consists of three main sections. You have your screen, you've got your function keys, and you have your keypad. The screen is where all the action happens. It displays different pages depending on what mode you're in. It shows your flight plan, performance data, navigation settings, and countless more things that you might want to see. Now down both sides of the screen you have your line select keys. You've got your L1, 2, 3, 4 down to 6, and your right 1, 2 down to 6. And these are used to select options on either side of the screen. So for example, L1 would select your FMGC. If you go back to the menu, R2 would select your maintenance screen. Now everything you input will be reflected here, and each line corresponds to a button on either side of the screen. Now probably most importantly, below the screen in your line select keys you have your primary function keys. And this is how we access the primary systems within the MCDU, such as your initialization, flight plan and direct to routings. So let's take a look at them. Now the first one we're going to look at is your init or your initialization page, and this is where we input the basic flight details such as your departure and arrival airports, your company route, your flight number, cost index and cruise flight level along with your temperatures. You then have your performance page where we configure takeoff speeds, V1, rotate, V2, climb, cruise, descent and approach performance settings, which will be on the next phases as you scroll through here. Now your RadNav is where we manually tune navigational aids such as VORs, ILS, NDBs and ADF frequencies if needed. Your progress page displays real-time flight progress, estimated times, fuel predictions. Your direct to page allows pilots just to modify the flight plan by going directly to a selected waypoint. And your secondary flight plan page is where your backup flight plan can be activated, just in case of any reroutings or emergencies. Now, these are the core function keys you'll be using to program the MCDU, and what we'll do now is we'll move on to show you how we actually enter the data. Now, at the bottom of the MCDU, we've got a full keypad, which works just like a regular keypad, and it allows the pilot or the users to enter text and numbers. You've got your alphanumeric keys A to Z and 0 to 9, and these are used to enter waypoints, flight levels, performance data. You've got your clear button, which is used to delete incorrect inputs. You've got your spacebar, which is used for entering spaces within certain fields, and then your plus or minus, which you might want to use for entering temperature inputs such as minus 20 degrees or plus 20 degrees. So that's really it on all the keys, and now you know what each button does, and don't worry if it seems like a lot, because by the time we finish setting up our flight, everything should start to make sense. And now that we've been through all the buttons, let's start programming our flight from Gatwick to Edinburgh. So now that we're ready to put our flight plan in and everything else, the first place you want to start is your initialization page. So we'll go ahead and click on initialization, and what you can see here is you've got various fields which haven't been populated, which we need to put in. Now, prior to making this video, I set up a live flight plan on SimBrief by Navigraph, and the flight plan can be seen here on the screen now. Now, as you can see here, we are going from Gatwick to Edinburgh. We've got all our data we need to put into the MCDU here, and then if we scroll down, we have our full operational flight plan route. So the first thing we want to do is we'll just shift this over so we can show everything at the same time. Now, we want to put in our from and to. Now, you can see from your flight plan that's on the page here, we're going from Gatwick, so we want to just simply type in the ICO identifier for Gatwick, which is EGKK, and you can see the format here. There's a backslash, so you want to type in the backslash and then put in EGPH, and then select line select key R1, and that'll input that into there. Now, our flight number today on the flight plan here is EZ111, so we want to type in EZY111 and then press flight number. Now, the next thing it's asking us for here is our cost index. If we go to our flight plan, we can see that we have a cost index of 5, and if you watch a previous video, I give a brief explanation of what the cost index does. So we type in 5 and we press line select key L5, and that puts it in cost index 5. And then the last piece of information on this page is our cruise flight level and our temperature. So we come over to our flight plan and we're at flight level 360. So you want to type in 360, and we need our temperature of minus 59. So we do backslash minus 59 L6 line select key, and that plugs all the data into this screen. Now, the next page we want to go to after init is over to our flight plan page. So we click on flight plan, and as you can see here, we don't actually have a route available. We've simply got our departing airport of EGKK Gatwick, we've got a flight plan discontinuity, and then we've got EGPH, which is Edinburgh. So we need to tell the aircraft in between Gatwick and Edinburgh what route we're following and how we're getting there. So the first thing we want to do is look back over at our flight plan again to get our departure sequence. And if we scroll down, we can see here that we're departing Gatwick from runway 26. So you want to click on line select 1 for Gatwick, click on line select 1 again for your departure. It's going to ask you what runway we're departing from, and as we can see here, we're going from runway 26 left, so we press the corresponding line select key, and now it's asking us for our standard instrument departure procedure. And as we can see on the flight plan, we are following our LAM 6M departure sequence. So you want to scroll down, and there it is there on page 2. So you just use these arrows to scroll up or down to the next page, and you can see your LAM 6M departure sequence. That enters it up in here to the SID entry, and then you click on R6 and insert it into your flight plan. Okay, so now that we've got our departure sequence programmed into the MCDU, what we need to do now is add in the rest of the waypoint information and our arrival and approach procedure into Edinburgh. Now to do that, we're going to jump back onto our operational flight plan, scroll down, and as you can see here, once we've left the Lambourne 6 Mike departure, the last waypoint that we should have on our MCDU is LAM. So we scroll down using these arrows, and as you can see here before our flight plan discontinuity, the last waypoint we have in fact is LAM. So how do we enter the next set of airways and waypoints into the MCDU? Well, it's quite straightforward. You go to your last entered waypoint, you click the corresponding line select key, and then on our flight plan, as we can see, our next point is an airway, which is L10. We would click on Airways, and we would simply type in L10 and then select the corresponding line select key to enter the airway. Now the next part on our flight plan is a waypoint of BPK. So we type in BPK and click on 2. Next we've got another airway, which is UN601. And an airway is really just like a road in the sky where any single airway such as L10 or UN601 will be a pre-programmed set of waypoints. So when you enter these in, all the waypoints that fall within airway UN601 will automatically load into the flight plan. And then we can see here that the next section on our flight plan is INPIP. So we want to fly to INPIP via UN61. So we type in INPIP, click 2, and then insert it into the flight plan. So the last thing that remains to do now is simply to enter our arrival information into Edinburgh. So we want to scroll all the way down till you can see INPIP is the last section before our flight plan discontinuity. And if we look on our flight plan, we can see that INPIP 1 Echo is our arrival procedure. How do we do that? Well, arrival is to your destination airport. So you click the corresponding line select key for your arrival airport. You click on right 1 or R1 where it says arrival. You then want to go back to your flight plan, and as you can see here, we've got runway 24. So we click in runway 24. It's going to be an ILS approach. Runway 24. And you want to just scroll down and then have a look at the stars that you've been given. Now we can see here that we have a standard terminal arrival procedure of INPIP 1 Echo. So we click on INPIP 1 Echo, no transition, and click on Insert. So now that our flight plan's entered, what we want to do is verify that we've actually entered it properly. So we'll close down our flight plan. We'll come back over to our MCDU in the central display, we'll scroll out, and then we'll look up at our navigation display. Now you want to make sure that your selector here is set to flight plan, so you can actually follow your flight plan. So select that, pick a zoom level that's appropriate for looking at it here, and you just want to select these arrow keys on the MCDU so you can actually scroll through your flight plan and make sure everything looks okay. So as we can see here, we're coming out of Gatwick, runway 26 left. Immediately after takeoff, we're making a 180-degree turn round to the right hand side, following ourselves over to Acorn, and then at D258K, we're then making a 90-degree left hand turn to follow and complete our departure sequence up to the Lambourne waypoint. We're then following the route all the way up to the northwest. Got the INPIP waypoint here. Then we've got our INPIP 1 Echo arrival procedure into Edinburgh Airport. And as you can see here, runway 24. And then the blue line just signifies that we've got our manual go-around procedure should we need to use it. So that concludes the programming of the flight plan. The MCDU now knows the entire route from Gatwick to Edinburgh, and that's going to just ensure a precise and efficient flight. So let's look at a summary of what we've covered. We've covered the initialization page, our flight number, our cost index, our cruise altitude, our departure from runway 26 left, following the Lamborn 6 Mike SID, waypoints en route to Edinburgh, and then our INPIP 1 Echo Standard terminal arrival into runway 24 at Edinburgh. Now, believe it or not, that's actually the hard part finished. The flight plan's complete, so now it's really just to go and set up all the performance criteria in the MCDU and then get the flight underway. So now that we've programmed the flight plan, the next critical step is to configure takeoff performance, and this includes setting takeoff speeds, flap settings, engine thrust, and aircraft weight data, all which are vital for safe departure. So to set up our takeoff configuration, we need to enter the performance page on the MCDU. Just get the zoom right here, sorry. So you press performance on the primary function keys, and that will now display our takeoff page where we enter all this data in here. Now, the most important speeds for takeoff are your V1, V-rotate and V2. So V1 is your decision speed where you're committed to takeoff. V-rotate is your rotation speed, and V2 can be defined as your single engine climb out speed, V2. So to get this information, I've used, there's various things and calculators out there that you can use. It ultimately uses the aircraft weights combined with weather data and runway conditions. But I've already entered the flight plan information into the Phoenix flypad. And as you can see here, we've got our takeoff performance information in here. So we've got V1 and rotate at 142 and V2 at 144. So we'll come back over. We'll put in 142 and then just basically press line select 1. Do the same again, 142 L2, and we had 144 and then put that in V2. Now we had a flap setting of 1 DN04. So we scroll down, we type in 1/DN0.4, and there we go. We had a flex 2 temperature of 68. So we put in 68 in our flex 2 temperature, and our transition altitude was 6,000 feet, so that all looks good in there. So just to recap on these settings, because each of these inputs serve critical roles in the departure. V1 is your point of no return. If something goes wrong before V1, we can abort takeoff. But if we pass V1 and something goes wrong, it can be anything, engine fire, bird strike, burst tyre, you must take off after reaching 142 knots on the ground. VR is your rotation speed, and this is when we start to pull back on the side stick to lift the aircraft off the ground. And then V2 is your takeoff safety speed, and this ensures that we've achieved a safe speed for climb out even on a single engine if we have an engine that fails. Our flap settings, flap 1 and our flex 2 temperature. Now, to extend engine life and save fuel, airlines often use reduced thrust takeoff, known as flex temperature takeoff, and this allows the aircraft to take off with less power and it still maintains a safe climb rate. So we've got a temperature in here of 68 degrees, and this means the aircraft will assume a higher outside air temperature and reduced engine thrust accordingly. If we need full power, we can always push those thrust levers to toga, which is takeoff and go around mode. And to set the flex takeoff mode, you have to go down to your thrust throttle quadrant and just make sure that we're on the flex MCT detent when we're pushing those levers forward for takeoff. Now the next thing we need to do is enter our aeroplane's centre of gravity and trim settings, which just help ensure proper weight distribution and stability during takeoff. So we want to go back to our initialization page, and this will bring us back to init A. Now we need to access init B, and as you can see here at the top, we've got the left and right arrows to signify that there's another page. So we select the arrow to go to the init B page, and we're presented with our zero fuel weight and our zero fuel weight centre of gravity. So luckily we can get this information from the flypad. So you want to go back over to your flypad if you're using the Phoenix simulator, go into your mass and balance section. You can also get this in the simulator by going to your mass and balance on your EFB, which is located in here, so you can get all that information. But we're using the Phoenix simulator, so we're going to use the flypad. Now we can see we've got a zero fuel weight of 54.8 tons. So we'll scroll back down. Zero fuel weight, 54.8. Now we've got a forward slash or a backslash, and then we've got a zero fuel weight centre of gravity. So we'll come back over to our flypad. We'll get our zero fuel centre of gravity, which is 31.9. So we'll come back down, type in 31.9, and then simply enter that in there. Now after you've put in your weight data, you want to click on this fuel planning button at line select R3. This will turn green and it'll automatically start calculating the block fuel, which should tie in with the amount of fuel you've got in your flight plan, which we do. So you want to just basically click confirm on that, and that'll set up all your fuel information. Now one other thing we can enter in here is your trip wind, which you really should do before your fuel planning, but I forgot. I'm only human, I'm not a real pilot. So we'll jump back to our flight plan. And on our flight plan, I'm not going to put it on the screen because it's just wind. We've got a tailwind of 5. So we're going to enter 5 and then put it in there. And there we go, TL5. If you had a headwind, you would just enter -5 and then it would change it to a headwind. But we've got a tailwind, so it's +5 or 5, and then we've got that there. Now that we've got all that information put into the MCDU, notwithstanding everything else we have to set up in the cockpit, but therefore other videos and previous videos, the aircraft is essentially ready to take into the sky. Now there are things you need to put into the MCDU while you're in the air, and probably one of the most prominent entry pages is going to be your approach phrase on your performance tab. So as you are coming towards the end of your cruise and you're reaching your top or descent, or you're in your descent and you're reaching your approach phase, you want to click on the performance page and then just press next phase until you get through to your approach. Now on your approach you've got various blue fields which are empty, and we need to populate these. Now if you don't do this, the MCDU will prompt you. It will come up in yellow text at the bottom left hand side, enter destination data, and this is just so the aircraft can be fully configured for your approach and your landing. So the first thing we want to put in here is our QNH. Now the QNH is the barometric pressure setting that just ensures the aircraft's altimeter reads the correct altitude above sea level when on the ground. The correct QNH ensures the autopilot and the flight directors give you accurate altitude and guidance during the approach. And in the simulator, the QNH is provided within the ATIS, which is also known as the Automatic Terminal Information Service, or you'll also get it from air traffic control, and I'll demonstrate how to do this shortly. If this is incorrect, the aircraft could misinterpret altitude, and it could lead to an unstable approach or even an upset situation. So to enter your QNH, now today I think we've got 1013, so you just type that in and then put that into the QNH field. Now I'm going to stop there because you can actually get the QNH information from the MCDU if the relevant ATIS providers are online. So to do that, you would go to the MCDU menu, you would click on ATSU, you would go to your AOC menu, and then you would just click on ATIS or ATIS, which is on your line select right 2. Now we are requesting ATIS information for Edinburgh, so we would type in EGPH. We're wanting arrival ATIS information, so we click on arrival and we click send. Okay, now that's that sent. Now you'll get a message on the ECAM display to let you know that you've got a message, and when that pops up, all we do is we go to receive messages. You'll have information in here, so we've got our load sheet messages with all the information for our load sheet. We can accept that. Go back to the messages page and click on ATIS, and there we go, there's our ATIS information for Edinburgh. So we know we at time 10:50, our runway in use was runway 24, which corresponds with our flight plan. Transition level 7500. We can scroll down. Surface wind 240, 22, visibility 7 kilometers. And what we're looking for is our barometric pressure. And then there's our frequencies there. Now I can't actually, oh there we go, QNH 1010. So go back to performance, scroll through, and put in 1010. And that's how you get your ATIS information. Now next section is your temperature, and this just refers to your outside air temperature. We've got 12, so we're going to plug in 12. The temperature is important. It affects air density and consequently the aircraft's performance during landing. On hot days, lower air density means the aircraft needs more thrust and longer landing rolls. On cold days, the denser air provides better lift and braking efficiency, and the aircraft will adjust its descent and approach profile and performance based upon this value. So now that we've got that in, we then want to go down to the mag and wind. Now this just represents the magnetic direction and speed of surface winds at the airport. This is important because wind affects approach speeds, crosswind connections, aircraft's final trajectory. Headwinds help slow the aircraft down, again reducing your landing roll. Tailwinds can make landings unstable. They do require a higher approach speed, ultimately resulting in longer landing rollouts, braking distances, and then crosswinds just need pilots to adjust the aircraft's nose and direction to compensate for wind drift. So what we've got here is we've got a magnetic direction of 230 degrees, and we've got 12 knots. So we plug that. Why didn't that work? 230 by 12. Oh, forgive me. 230. It's pressing the wrong button there. /12. And I'll plug that in there. Now, you've got baro. Baro is your barometric decision height for non-precision approaches. Now we are flying a precision approach today because we're using a ILS approach. And for standard ILS approaches, this is typically set at 200 feet above ground level. So we'll plug in 200. Now, like I said, this is the decision height for non-precision approaches, such as RNAV or VOR approaches. And using the barometric altimeters, it represents the altitude at which the pilot must decide whether to continue or abort the landing. It's important because it ensures safe go-around decision points when visibility is poor. If the runway is not visible at altitude, then the approach must be discontinued. And for ILS Category 1 approaches, the decision height, like I've said, is 200 feet. So we'll plug in 200 feet in there. Now, the next one is radio. This is your radio altimeter decision height for precision approaches. So for Cat 2 or 3 ILS approaches, this is typically 50 feet above ground level. Now radio is the decision height for precision approaches under Cat 2, Cat 3 ILS, and this is based upon the aircraft's radio altimeter. This is important because it gives more accurate measurement of altitude above the ground. It's used in low visibility conditions where normal baro decision heights might not be precise enough. And in ILS Category 3 Autoland, the decision height is as low as 50 feet above ground level, or even 0 at full Autoland conditions. So what we're going to do here as an example is just enter 50 feet into the radio. Now the last section is our landing configuration, flaps and speed brakes. So this just refers to the flap settings used for landing. This is important, fairly obvious. Different landing configurations affect approach speeds and landing distances. A config full flaps provides the lowest approach speeds and the shortest landing distance, and this is used for short runways and wet conditions. It does mean more drag and higher fuel burn, slower approach speeds. Config 3 reduces drag, allows for faster approaches and shorter taxi distances, and this is often used when go-arounds are more likely, for example at busier airports. So we've got a config 3 today. So we're just going to leave that on our config 3. To switch it to full, you just select full at the bottom and it'll change it. But we're going to change to config 3 because that's what we are flying in today. So summary of our entry points in here was our QNH, our temperature, our wind, barrel, radio, and landing config. And like I said, this is typically done during your descent phase or just prior to your top of descent. And with all the approach data entered, the aircraft now has the information it needs for a precise and safe landing. And then you're fully set up for approach into Edinburgh. Now, the very last button that I'm going to cover on the MCDU today is the DIR, or Direct To button. And this really just allows us to make quick changes to our flight plan. Now, when you're in the air, you'll often get shortcuts or redirects from air traffic control. So let's say we are currently in the air, we've just left the Poton waypoint and we're flying towards Bedford, which I'm going to guess is a Bedford waypoint. And air traffic control have given us clearance to fly directly to POL, ultimately giving us a shortcut, which means we can skip out everything in between. So what you want to do is basically just go to the waypoint where you've been granted permission to fly directly to, click on the line select key, and then select on DIR to insert, and then that will automatically alter your flight plan and then navigate the aircraft to that waypoint directly. We're getting an error in here because we've not taken off yet, and the aircraft doesn't know why we're trying to do that on the ground. So yeah. So everybody, just like that, we've completed the setup for a full flight from London Gatwick to Edinburgh, using the MCDU to manage every phase from initial setup, departure, all the way through to approach and landing. And I hope that what once seemed like an overwhelming system is now something you can confidently navigate. The MCDU A320 isn't just a flight computer. Like I said, it's the heart of modern aviation automation, and it just allows pilots to fly more efficiently, safely, and with greater precision. So let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered today. So in chapter 1 we've covered understanding the MCDU. We've explored the layouts, the buttons, the functions. We've then programmed our flight plan, including departure waypoints and arrival routes. We've set up our V-speeds, flap settings and thrust levels for departure. We've then showed management of the MCDU in flight and showed how the MCDU manages navigation with redirecting to waypoints and then setting up our approach and landing phase through inputting various bits of data such as your temperatures, your winds and your barometric pressures. So from start to finish, the MCDU will be your co-pilot. It'll calculate your performance and it'll guide you along airways, adjusting for winds and just ensure that everything's safe and efficient. So whether you're flying a Microsoft Flight Simulator or just preparing for real world training, like I said, I'm not a pilot, so this is purely for entertainment purposes only, or just want to deepen your understanding, mastering the MCDU is essential. It will transform your flight experience from basic controls to a truly immersive and realistic operation. And this is how commercial pilots operate, leveraging automation to reduce workload and optimise efficiency. So if you've made it this far, congratulations. I hope you now have the knowledge to program and use the MCDU. But remember, the learning never stops, and I'm going to keep putting up more videos to try and help people. Every flight you'll have will present new challenges, from changing weather conditions to air traffic control reroutes. So the more you practice, the more confident you'll become. And ultimately, I learned from watching YouTube. There's many other content creators on there who provide really good videos, better videos than me. I'm very new to YouTube. I'm learning how to do it all the time, and I hope the quality of the content's going to improve the more I publish things online. And I hope you guys keep coming back to watch. So if you liked it, remember, please like, subscribe, comment, let me know your thoughts below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye bye.